Alright, first I just gotta check. How's that? Does it feel percussive? Yeah. Okay. Home, I've known, is beyond a mere place. What exactly? Not sure, but so let's begin with what it ain't. Teaching chewed us up, it digested our faith in ourselves, in planning every day face to face with unwinnable deficits, a reckless outcome race. Between gaps in learning and my lack of skill and grace, for so long I leaned on a home of escape. Each day a battle, a familiar ache. I was frenetic, dependent on the end of the day, just to begin pretending the lesson I invented that morning at breakfast could accomplish the aim. So I'm crooning to myself at school the sweet hymn of afternoon, when those kids would fade away. And soon I could too, in my bedroom with my J, my little slice of home at the end of the day. My pause until the sun's claws hit play. And I know escape only does so much, but man, it felt great, and sometimes still does. I was perpetually homeward bound, never quite being where I was, but always looking forward to that next moment of the day when I could be okay. So much of my esteem was determined by what did or didn't happen in the confines of the classroom, and my classroom was a mess. So every weekend I played out a life cycle of dreaming and envisioning and planning, knowing the plan was stillborn, knowing that its miscarriage was a foregone conclusion, because come Monday, I didn't know how to raise kids up when their heads were down. I didn't know how to act when Destiny came around, blatantly gossiping in her seat during instruction, and when I addressed her, she'd shoot back with something like, "Excuse me, mister, but I'm really not feeling it today, thanks." Shit. So the cycle continued of dreaming, birthing, failing, and escaping until about March, when we got a miracle. A semblance of home born into the space by the grace of a student who turned out to be a poet. And while I know it's probably something more, home involves a listening for sure. Because to this day I recall, and suspect I always will, Hamilton Hoff, and the way the class stood still as he spoke with his voice raw, his very being filled, and he carried us along when he shared what his ink spilled. He spoke of greatness that his aunt had seen in him. He talked about the burden of the blessing of having someone he admired and who he respected and who had died demand his absolute best. In his voice I remember anger and love and doubt and worth, all wrapped up into one. And when he was done, I expressed to him the way he brought us home. For while he spoke, the only sound other than his voice was of pens getting down, a question or a point. So I told him that I saw, as he bared his treasured truth, he united us all. I swear our silence is the proof. From his mouth came living wires that no bullshit could refuse. The class became a circuit, feel the voltage in the room. It was literally the first time in that class that everybody was listening to one person. Electrified and brought alive, no sense of looking forward to. We were where we're supposed to be. Fuck the song of afternoon. Through listening came connection, and from connection, home. A truly true belonging you can't forget once you have known. I think by now we've all had that golden day, that special memory that we keep on replay because we can't forget it and it gives us a sense of home. But how flawed the thought that because you can't forget it, now home would flow if only you would let it. I was so distraught when I came the next day expectant and saw that peace before us wrought, the kids revert to disrespecting, and to my mind a bubble popped. On the inside was a question. Can't I just hang on until my 2 years have ended? Beneath that question was another. Can't I escape? I want it so much, 'cause damn it feels great, and I've had enough. That day was a glimmer of light, but it only accentuated the utter darkness of the night. Even though it still shines bright, check the bigger picture of the plight. Casual cussing in the hallways all day. Friendships founded on put-downs, y'all gay. And yeah, we were idiots when we were their age, but I devoured Emerson, the bard was a sage, and I had faculty enough to level with him on a page. Now I work with seniors who often struggle to explain a quote from McLean, who needs 6th grade reinforced before we can discourse on a refrain, and they can't be to blame. It's a system they were slipped in, some uncomical cosmic joke from a stroke of God having an aneurysm as a crackhead victim. But we can't be to blame when the grades are standard based, so half the kids can't hold their lids when the F is by their name, and admin is the same. Cause how do we do our part to make a dent or fucking mark if we can't maintain our graduation rates? Woo! So give them a chance to make the A or else our funding goes away. And when this is the game to play, where do you even start? And where in all of that is there room for home and heart? At the end of that first year, I took a trip, like many of us, I think, to get away and to question if this teaching thing was really for me. I'm honored that I got to take that trip with a woman I consider a guide, and with her students who I continue to see and who I support and who support me, because at the time I was finding every way of escaping. I was fueled by Adderall in the morning. I took the edge off with weed at night. I found myself pursuing 3 different dead-end relationships, impossible relationships with women who could never love me the way I wanted them to. I learned that I was pursuing all of these ways of escaping because they helped me avoid the vulnerability and the risk of building a home where one didn't already exist. The kind of building that takes work, and where failing to do it well hurts. So I found it easier to play the martyr than to risk being disappointed by what I was worth. The way I was brought home from that is not something to describe. It's something to evoke. Because in each of us it resides where the awake becomes awoke. Imagine all your insecurities, your doubts and demons known, distilled right here in the open air, behind the curtain shown. Beyond that fear of judgment of those who walk with stones is the threshold we grow up in when we're heartfelt and exposed. Just as I was on that trip when all my shit was known. And I had all those faults dismissed, like burdens turned to smoke, like the prison of my lack become the possibility of home. I was speechless and effusive, to passers-by straight stupid, a paradox of movement, cause I couldn't talk but communion, beyond thought rolled through when I saw the dots, caught the plot, God, I'm heard of my students, or have the chance if I take the stand and pass this truth on to them, that no level of lack or loss can stop the unchanged human, when the spine of what can be is strong, we rise from out our ruin. And still sometimes I shudder at the obstacles we face. To stand for that kind of possibility takes immeasurable strength. But by now we've seen and done firsthand things impossible when we began, and that's my favorite home to date. So while escape can soothe with its touch, what is has so much more than what will or what was. Home, I've known, is beyond a mere place. It's connection and presence through our service and grace. However we may falter or blame or escape, it's always right here once we surrender our restraint. Thank you.